Hey everybody, it's Chris Gallagher. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you are taking some time to watch our video Bible class series. We are talking about Acts chapter 9 this week as we get into our text. Now the video probably looks a little bit different to you because we're trying a few new things out because we've got some travels coming up. We want to be sure that we can still bring to you our Bible classes as we go through those. So I hope that you're going to join us. Hope that you're going to follow along. We're going to be in Acts chapter 9 as we talk about the man named Saul. Now, we know him as Paul. If we're New Testament Christians, we've heard these stories about Saul. We've heard the stories about Paul. It's the same individual. However, there's a drastic change of life that we are going to be digging into today. So I want you to follow along, if you can, in Acts chapter 9. If you're watching this maybe somewhere where you don't have a Bible readily available, at least go back and spend some time watching this video series and digging into your scriptures a little bit more. We always want to make sure that you have the Bible open and that you're following along. Now, one of the things that we typically do is on Mondays as we read through the text. On Tuesdays we start to dive into it. When this being Tuesday, let's get into our text today. It says, "But Saul." Now that's the first two words of the English Standard Version. I want to encourage you to go backwards and to look at what's happened. You have to go all the way back to the beginning of Acts chapter 8. And in that you find that Saul has rage against the church. There was a stoning of Stephen at the end of Acts chapter 7 into Acts chapter 8 because Stephen made the Jewish leaders mad. He made them upset. In Acts chapter 7, they emotionally were attached to the old law. They were physically attached to the old law and even spiritually attached to the old law. So when Stephen preached about Jesus, they became offended. They picked up stones, began to stone him. Saul was there. He was agreeing to his death. Now, in the middle of chapter 8, you find out that there's a man by the name of Philip. And maybe one day we'll go back and talk about Philip. But what was happening is Philip is preaching the gospel. A lot of things are happening. A lot of good things are happening. You get into not only Philip, as you get into the text, you see all the works that he was able to do. But then in chapter 9 and verse 1, it says, "But Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest." So Saul's angry. But however, I want you to remember something. Stephen is what we call the first Christian martyr. And what that is, I think we need to re-examine that thought, and maybe we'll do that at another time as well. But being the first Christian martyr means that Stephen died for the cause of Christianity, which is true, and it hadn't happened before, really, we do not believe. So what happens in that is that Saul now has an open door policy, meaning he can go and he can start killing Christians. So he's angry, he's frustrated, he's seen the anger of the people, he has seen their emotions. So he goes to the high priest and he asks for letters. Now these letters are going to be letters of approval. And he was going to take these to the synagogues at Damascus. Now why the synagogues? Very important. The synagogues are the place of Jewish learning. The synagogues are going to be like the community center where a lot of people would come and they're going to learn a lot of different things from different teachers about the law, about everyday life. It's an educational center. So he is going to take these letters to the synagogue in Damascus. And if he finds, it says, anyone belonging to the way, whether it's men or whether it's women, they don't care. Anyone belonging to the way, it says that he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. So he's going to have the Jewish authority through the high priest to go to the synagogues to find anybody that's belonging to the way who's a Jew and bring them and cast them in the prison. That's his job. That's what he is going to do. He's got momentum pressing forward, and now this is what he feels is his responsibility. So he gets these letters and he's traveling to Damascus. And it's interesting to note that the people in Damascus knew what Saul was doing. We'll see that in the text a little bit later. They understood exactly what was happening. So when Saul goes to Damascus, they're prepared. They do not want to be Christians there in Damascus because they know that Saul is coming. So they probably are thinking about going into hiding for a little while so Saul can't find them. But here's what happens. It says verse 3 of Acts chapter 9, once again, reading from the English Standard Version. "Now as he went on his way, he approached Damascus, and suddenly a light from heaven shone around him." So he's traveling from Jerusalem to Damascus, and as he goes, the trip's normal. Then all of a sudden this light shines around him, and the light's very interesting. It says, "And Saul fell to the ground. He heard a voice saying, 'Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?' He answers the voice, and he says, 'Who are you, Lord?' Who are you, Master? Because the question is, why are you persecuting me? Not why are you persecuting Stephen, not why did you kill Stephen, not why are you persecuting disciples, not why are you going to Damascus, but why are you persecuting me? Because this is a personal question. And Saul turns around and says, wait a second, who are you, Lord? And he says, I am Jesus. Now, I don't know what went through Paul's mind. I can only think about what went through his mind when he hears the words, I am Jesus. He's persecuting Jesus. He's persecuting the followers of Jesus. And now who's he having a discussion with? Jesus. He has a powerful discussion. He says, I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. That's the end of the discussion. As has been revealed to us in God's Word, that's the end of the discussion. But it goes on. Excuse me. Fighting a little bit of allergies. It says, but rise and enter the city and you will be told what to do. There's no more discussion. There's a point. I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. Now there's the action step. This is what I want you to do. But it says the men who were traveling with him stood speechless. They heard the voice, but they saw no one. They didn't see anybody, but they heard this voice. Many people believe that Saul is directly looking at Jesus and he's having that discussion with the Lord. Because we know to be an apostle, one of the characteristics is you have to have seen Jesus, the risen Lord. So it's just Paul's seeing of Jesus and the way that it is happening. But it says in verse 8, Saul arose from the ground, although his eyes were opened, he saw nothing. So getting up from the ground, he can't see. He can't see anything around him. He doesn't see a thing. Now, how would that change your life? We know how it changed Saul's life, but how would that change your life going forward? It says his eyes were opened, he saw nothing, so they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus, and for 3 days he was without sight and neither ate nor drank. 3 days after a life-changing experience, he can't eat or drink. He can't even think about the possibilities as to what is happening in his life. Just imagine where you would be if that happened to you. If you're persecuting Jesus, then you have a discussion with Jesus. He tells you what to do, and you go do it. But for 3 days, he didn't do anything. Didn't eat or drink. And remember, his eyes are opened, but he can't see a thing. So what happens? Well, it says in verse 10, there's a disciple at Damascus. Now, a disciple is the word for student learner. There's a student learner. This disciple means a disciple of Jesus, not just anybody's disciple. We know that's implied in the text. We know it's understood in the text. And it says there's a disciple at Damascus named Ananias. And the Lord goes to Ananias in a vision and says, Ananias? He says, here I am, Lord. He recognizes what's happening. It says, and the Lord said, rise and go to a street called Straight, and at the house of Judas look for a man of Tarsus named Saul. For behold, he is praying. That's an all-telling statement. And the all-telling statement is, Ananias, I've chosen you. And I need you to go to the house of a man named Judas. And I need you to look for a man of Tarsus named Saul. Now, immediately, Ananias has a fantastic response to this. Because remember, people knew about him. They knew what he was doing. They knew how he was doing it. And they knew what it meant to their life. So here you have a great man, Ananias, who's going to go help Saul at the time, change his life. So come back and be with us tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to dig into this text just a little bit more, but I am so glad that you're here. If you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble, be sure to subscribe to our channel. If you're on YouTube, hit that bell so you get all of our notifications. And as always, check us out at preacherspen.org. We would love to have you follow us on our Bible study series as we dig into this a little bit more. But as always, I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Be blessed. Thank you.